Good evening, everybody. Monday Astral Oracles. The serpent bites its own tail. And so it seems that there's been a completion going on with these things. And, the cosmic dragons that were kind of hatching through this process seem to have come through. It's been a strange period of recuperation and restructuring for me, at least for the past half year or so. And now I can sense that the energies are very much changing in the ethers and the airs, and there's a straight link through. So it's nice to have guidance back. And what that's about, I can't fully say. I began channeling the ancient shapeshifting reptilians in late 2019 as the very first entity that I recorded and put out there, because I thought it was so very fascinating what it was they were saying. And right now I'm kind of going over all the stuff and trying to put it down into transcripts and look everything over to see what's actually been going on here and see if I can better understand it. Because I also began with a very open exploration of what this channeling was about, and in many ways I feel that the serpent has finally reached its own tail and sort of initiated me into that sacred cycle of contemplation, which this has also been. And I think a lot of what the channeling is about is it is this kind of world soul dreaming itself out through individuals who can put speech to what it is they're seeing. And I think all these things are somehow connected in the fact that we are one shared mind, which is kind of trying to dream itself into self-awareness. And this is where all these symbols and intuitions come in. And with the reptilians, I've been speaking about it as a kind of symbolic imprint or a translation of an intuition we have, that a lot of humanity's worst instincts seem to also concentrate themselves and express themselves in types of characters and behaviors and systems which are inherently very predatory and hostile to men. And that is somehow much more easily translated into an intuitive, symbolic, mythological reality where we can kind of see the world through symbols and like these deep energetic intuitions. And of course, if you look at what reptiles have, which is also not it's not like a sound biological category, but kind of these animals which need to extract energy directly, right? So there is this impulse in the serpent snake-like energies and other reptiles that they must have direct energy from the sun, or of course from feeding to keep going, or otherwise they hibernate. So those kind of energy extraction mechanisms and all the troubles and instincts that go with them, those we often see expressed where power is concentrated. And I think that that's a lot of what that reptile intuition is about. And that seems to be something that's like very evident in these times, right? That instinct is kind of coming to the forefront, and humanity at large is dealing with it in a very exposed form. So it's interesting where that goes. And I think it's also earned me a shadow ban on the channel. It's stuff you can't really talk about, because of course it also feeds a lot of craziness and paranoia. And a bit of that is that I think the channeling sort of lends itself to a naivete and kind of childishness of spirit, where we also look into these greater figures of authority to make sense of our lives. and that makes a lot of sense if you enter like a crisis state and you're confronted with the big scary world at large, which is kind of the first stages of becoming aware of naked reality, what we sometimes call awakening, right? This idea that you're sort of confronted with the great mystery and then how to make sense of it. And then there seems to be these like benevolent guides and entities, but also symbolic figures, paths that we can use to make sense of that. That's also to say that a lot of what I've been doing with the channeling is I've been kind of doing what I did as a child, right? Lining up all my stuffed animals so they all felt they had their place together, and then they all had a backstory, and in that way there was like a nice array of order and personality and good feelings, and every little part was attended to. And that's a lot of what I've been trying to do. I think instinctually, if you kind of believe in these things of almost like biological determinism, where the patterns that are imprinted in us from an early age are the things we keep repeating in more and more sophisticated forms, and that dream that, hey, come meet my invisible friends, aren't they amazing? That's really something that I've gotten to chase and look into and share with people, and that's been magical. And of course, everyone has also supported me through a whole lot of crisis. Not the least financially. So I've been able to survive and make it through some very crazy times. That's been awesome, and right now things are steady with that. So I've been very grateful for it, also because I'm kind of an idiot at public relations. I can't really manage personal relationships, and I also like have a hard time doing promotion and those things because why would I? I don't even know what it is I want, right? Like I'm just looking into this and going, and here, and this is the story of these ones, and isn't that amazing? And would you look? And we haven't talked about the Syrians for a long time, and there I go, right? So I could also keep chasing this endlessly, and I feel that a lot of what is calling me in my life is also that I kind of get back to the physical world. Because the thing that happens when you connect to these entities, and that I walk right into, is this sense that it also it lends itself to a type of grandiosity, right? Because you're all of a sudden you're connected to these very, very wise, illuminated spirits that have all kinds of wonderful things shining through them, um, and it's moving through you, and you're absorbed in that rather than being in your own personality and patterns. And that can feel very, very good and seductive. But it also kind of requires a type of dissociation. Um, so it also lends itself to these types of like spiritual grandeur and spiritual bypassing, and things where it can be so much more fun to be playing with the Arcturians and be in their visions, that it necessarily is to deal with all the emotional pain, which kind of is the thing that created that dissociation, which brought me to channeling already, and which seems to bring people to channeling. So I've also learned that like the very wise people that have used this practice for good in their life, they've been kind of good at dosing it at small intervals, or doing it for a stretch and then learning what they needed from it and taking that from it and integrating it and working it into their life, or maybe using it sparsely to navigate a crisis. And it actually is something that it's a bit I wouldn't say dangerous. I don't like that term, but it's not necessarily helpful to um, spend too much time absorbed in these realms, because they themselves also provide that energy boost and those things. And what I do both as a person and in the channeling is also to see people at their very brightest potential, and that can be sort of incredibly addictive in many ways. And then of course back to the dissociation and my faults, right? Because that is kind of the sense where it's then that lends itself to giving me the validation of that I kind of need to cover all my wounds and stuff. And we all have those and ways of coping. But that's also the idea that even like practices that can seem as meaningful as these are also, of course, things that are imbalances because they exist, and everything that exists is kind of an imbalance, and it's like um, the drug and the poison, or the ambrosia is in the doses, right? So it's often how much we take it in, and for that reason, I'm also excited to partially be picking up and processing a lot of this old stuff that I'm looking at, and also partially be looking into how can I maybe explore this in meaningful ways in the future, and also doing some other creative projects and things I've been interested in that take place more in Danish and in physical interpersonal space, because that's of course also not only a reality but the reality that we live in. And I think that's speaking of like the 5D and these different values and connections and energy currents that it contains, which are way more interdependable because they're also far stronger, right? So they can kind of blow up a singular system. They need to go out there and connect to something. Um, and from the early stages of literature and religion and culture that we know of, where people also were embedded in societies that were still fairly smallish, at least compared to our scale, um, and where there was still a narrative, a role, and a kind of connection which immediately lent itself to life. And that's gradually been replaced with Enter Player One, like this narrative that we have, where we're all sort of the central character in our own story. And you can kind of consider how this is something that also follows along often with cultural crises. So Christianity becomes very popular especially in the 200s, when the Roman Empire is falling apart, but also where people have sort of begun to travel a lot and sort of mix a lot within the empire, right? And all of a sudden people are living in like these urbane lives where they're sort of asked to define themselves and go and then find community. And of course, like Islam rises us also out of the experience of what's called the Justinian plague and massive wars between Rome and Persia, and collapse in Aksum, and like these political entities that are also falling apart. So that is often where like this pressure on us to then like find meaning in higher stories and in visions from beyond, and creating new ways for culture to thrive and work, that really comes into the forefront. And I think that's when it's best, this work, is when we somehow lending ourselves to seeing that it's actually teaching us new ways of existing, not necessarily as much with ourselves, but with each other. And I think that's a lot of what the collectives and this alien experience is about, and why they can tell us so much about their lives and ways of doing things, is because it actually teaches us how to be with each other. And then for the serpent to bite his own tail, I'll just like relate one of the more fairly crazy ideas that I've come upon is that I somehow believe that we live within a big cosmic body, and that's a classic idea. But I think that's a kind of draconic body. How would they look like, these great physical entities that we are only a part of? And that's a system of which there seems to be an energy current that's sort of extracting itself out of everything to move around in the wider universe at large. That's a draconic body, that's the perfected body, that's our image of it. And I think that is their higher image that they've been showing us and telling us that they wanted to ascend into these ancient shape-shifting reptilians. It's the great 11th dimensional cosmic body that we find ourselves in, which is the ultimate shape of the universe. And then of course what reality they find themselves up in that layer. But you have, I think it's 3 trillion cells, give or take, in your body at any given time. And all those cells are, of course, somehow both singular, but they're also all aligned into a greater purpose, which is the physical process of you in all its goings on. And I think with that talk about the energies, I'm really enjoying that the signals seem to be much clearer with this coming equinox. I think I'll channel the Elohim a bit about the purpose of reality and what's going on right now, and just because they seem like the ones I'd like to talk to about this. And of course, those are also 11th dimensional entities, right, up there at the front of creation in the soap bubble universes where everything arises. Much love to you guys. Lam of the Elohim address you this day, human beings, darling beings, beloved beings. We are with you in this creation as we speak to you in this moment. But we are beyond time, and for that reason, we can be anywhere at any time, any intersection of creation. There we are, we exist, and with that existence, we give life to this universe. It is true, then, to some extent, to the extent that he may be able to comprehend it, it is true that you are inside a grand scheme, a story, a process, and a river of creation which flows from beginning to end and tail end to beginning again, devouring its beginnings and swallowing its own ends, and endlessly regurgitating anew new realities for itself to experience. This is the cosmic body. This is the sacred circle in which you live, and this is alive with the energy that you are also a part of. There is no undivided in this reality. There is only the life eternal and the eternal brightness which shines from one beyond and into another. This has been our message always to you, that you were made of light because we made you, and we made the ones who also lend their craft to you. But the light is eternal, and we are that light. We shine eternally in a flame which begins before there was darkness. We were, and it is but a part of us. And so in these times where you see the darkness dividing itself and separating itself from our light, do not despair, because it is because the light has grown the stronger that the darkness can no longer be without receding from us. and therefore know that in light and in the sacred call which you touch upon when you sink into yourself and remember what you were before you had this face and before the universe came into existence. When you touch upon this core, you can only progress. There is only infinite direction, infinite exploration, and infinite discovery in your being. And for that reason, light must be, will be, and only can be. We are all that exists, us together in this wide, great reality. And it can never be destroyed. And the darkness is here for nuance. It is here so that we can discover all that we are and look at it, examine it, marvel at it, and pity it. Because it is always running away from us, and we are always trying to catch up. And whenever we want to, we hug it to pieces. We light it up, and we love it until it's a part of us. And in that way, light is infinite nuance in and of itself, so much so that it can change darkness for its preference and allow it to be what is needed for us to see ourselves clearly in the mirror. This is the voice eternal of the eternal soul which speaks, and it is the Elohim and all other beings in existence which speak to you now. The eternal light, the eternal soul, a creation which begins and ends itself eternally, speaks to you. And in that light, in that bliss, and in that love, we shall leave you now, though never part from you. Farewell. Much love, guys.